Bienvenidos and welcome back to nuestro Papi. We hope you're enjoying this series. Do you know the word incertidumbre?
Incertidumbre, yeah, which means you are not sure of what happened in the future. That's incertidumbre is like going in a dark room. That's very similar. You go or you close your eyes and you try to walk and you don't know where you're going. But you got to go forward. You go with very cautela, cautious, and thinking what you say before you say it.
Yeah, cautiously, yeah, like you said. So, what was that next step after your dad had that conversation with you?
Well, then I said I had to leave the country because I'm not going to be. So then, a couple of days later, he went and talked to his uncle Benigno, the owner of the Casa Balbiga and all that, and Jose let's send me to Spain because they had property there and things like that. And then I told my dad, no, Franco is a dictator like us, so how can I go from one place to the next? I want to go to the United States, so I started doing then trying to get the application for the Peter Pan scenes, but I didn't want to waste any time. So there was a friend of mine that was called Pedro Agüero, and he already had one. So we took it and we made a copy that said Pedro Prado and had a copy made at the jewelry store that was Lendoiro. They had a copy machine because they have a jewelry store. And we made it, and I started the process because I thought I was going to, get on time my permit.
I'd like to go back a little bit to that moment when you had that conversation with your dad. Was it obvious what you were gonna do? Was it intense? Like, how was the emotion of that
Oh
conversation?
yeah, it was because especially when you have family, you understand now when you gotta separate yourself from your son, and you now once you become something like that, you say how the tremendous amount of pain and uncertainty for them that I had to leave because I would be in trouble if I stay. So for them, the desire for me to be okay and not be in jail or being executed, you never know, was better choice. And we were end up being separated for 17 years. And it's a very traumatic situation. And finally said, no, I just wanted to, let's do it. And I got 100% support. My mom would take me to all the trips. She went with us and things like that so the support was there. But I could tell right away, my mom had a lot of suspiros, and because she was hurting inside. She was hurting inside, and my dad was very nervous all the time, and they knew what was going to happen. On the other hand, I'm very, very happy that God set up my life because I have you all, my family, with Tomasa and then with Nancy, and that has been my number one goal because knowing how I miss my family and was not able to enjoy it, that's what I wanted, that we can enjoy it. And it's been the biggest impact. When you look back, I say, yes, it could have been different, but I'm so happy about the result. The end has been fabulous.
That's what makes a good story, a good life is we think our life's going to turn out this one way. When you're 12, you're 13 years old in your case, or 15, and maybe the revolution happens. We were just talking like a couple weeks ago that the joy that was being felt across the country, and then plot twist, the complete different future is now being paved, and you have to decide, do I stay, do I go? In this incertidumbre of like uncertainty of what is next, and because of that decision to not capitulate to the revolution and to the Communist Party, you made the choice to go, not knowing where you would go. And I think that's life. That's where I find myself right now. That's where Katie, Jackie, Chris, all of us in our age
Yeah.
right now, where we don't know maybe exactly where we're going, but we're taking the steps to get there, and we're ready to pivot along the way. Curious about that unknown part of So you can't go back to school. So now you can't go back to school. You have to leave the country, but you still have to do something during the day while you wait for your documents and processes and everything ahead. How did you spend your time when you were technically still school aged?
Well, I was not I'm not taking my father's business yet, so I started helping him there in the coffee business, and you get involved with your friend, play basketball, and you get together. I visit Tomasa every night, and then you stand by the door with Lilia washing, make sure that you don't get too close. And then after I leave there, we went to the park and we had a group of people. We all get together and talk for a while, and then we go home. And so very cotidiana vida. How you call it? You know, very domestic. So you do the same thing and just waiting, and then things happen, and time goes by. Before things start. The time went by, but there were nothing spectacular that happened that can bring your attention. But it was very regular, very.
I gotta say, Poppy, it sounds and just by hearing more of your stories at this age, you sounded like you were I would say immature. You know, you were young. How like did this start to make you grow up really quickly at this period of time?
Well, it did. It did. Thank you. And but you feel suffocated. You want to get out of there. Time is like a little bit slow down. You just go without any activity that you. First, you have to be careful who you associate with, because if you got the wrong person, you end up in jail. So you have to make sure that you are in a group of people that you know each other very well and have the same affinity in the way you think. So, but and time goes by. You are anxious waiting for your moment to leave. So it's that's the thing that you more or less keep your eyes there, and what's going on here doesn't impact you as much because you are looking at the big picture.
Yeah. Were you in school when there was the literacy campaign, the first literacy campaign?
Oh yeah, that started. That they started that process was one of the first process that Castro started.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, it was volunteers. I did was a fan of Castro, I would say from the beginning, because I remember when he was preparing because it's a good preparing everything. So he's the centerpiece of everything. And Camilo took over Havana and everything was taking care of everything. Then he started coming all the way from Oriente, from La Sierra to Havana in a tank, and the people. And I remember that I was sitting in the park and said, "Oh, Castro's coming through there." And I didn't get up and went to see him pass on the tank because I already had the feeling that this guy was telling me, and you start recognizing those things. So I was glad that Batista was down, but now didn't have, I was never a sympathizer of him.
Mm-hmm.
I was no sympathizer of the student group that got killed by very, how you call it, suspicious circumstances. They rebelled, they were about to get rid of Batista. And so, but the key part of that was for the 26th of July, that was Castro movement at the beginning, to take over the bridge from Almendares Bridge so the tanks won't come in. And they didn't do it. And then tank came in and they were able to save Batista and kill a lot of people. And the Manzanita, that was the president of the university at that time, he see that. And maybe because I was more in that thing as a student and looking forward to go to the university, that was the kind of thing that we wanted, not Castro's thing. And we didn't like certain things like his brother. We knew that was communist, so we didn't like Che Guevara at all. He killed some campesinos because they didn't help them or something, and it's just so there was no. we love Camino Sin Fuego because he was more of a straight hero. He don't did barbaric thing, but he was very, and so there was that kind of scene there. And all those things going to you, and we are talking to friends, and we have that kind of a scene. So it's hard to explain and comprehend unless you are going through those moments.
Right.
And because you don't even realize how important they're going to be in the future. But
Right.
then you see, hey, when you look back and say, that's exactly what happened.
It all makes sense.
And all these things, when that happened, the atentado Batista, and they got on the radio, they got the station, they announced that Batista is gone and things like that. The tank show up and they lost. And we knew that was the 26th of July didn't do it because Castro didn't want it. He cannot have somebody take over Havana because that was the idea. Whoever take over Havana, take over the whole country. And that's one of the things. He stopped it.
Wow.
So it was malevolence. He only wanted the power and he did it and he destroyed Cuba.
Yeah, yeah. There was the consolidation of power. As far as with the nationalization of land and nationalization of businesses, how did that impact your family?
Well, it's hard because it happened at different moments at different times, and in Tomasa's side, I mean, her uncle was a big politician, and the moment Batista left, he had to leave too because he was a senator.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Tomasa's dad was a veterinarian, and they say they were going to save the cattle industry in Cuba, so all the veterinarians had to be part of the government. So they made him, and then they moved him to Ciego de Avila, and that's when I met. So life started happening like that. But it's in bits and pieces that happened, and that happened. I had to meet her because I didn't want to go around that other, because there was a girl that I didn't want to have a relationship with. So, I mean, life is funny how things happen, and at the end it turned out well. I mean, so but it's hard to see. But my family, well, my uncle, or my dad's uncle, Benigno, they put him in jail. He had a paperweight that was a grenade, but a grenade that had been. I have one.
Yeah, you have one. I know. I was thinking that.
And but it's not. You take the explosive and it's just a piece of metal. And for that, then they went and took all his businesses, putting him in jail. And I was the only one who went to visit him because everybody was afraid but I went because at that time, it happened kind of early, maybe a year or something like that. I was a little defiant. I always was. I was, and then my problem was that I didn't learn not to talk, but I would face people and, hey, why? And so, but I went to see him and then took all his business and then took my dad business. And so he knew that since it was communism coming, no way.
When you were there, were you in Cuba when they took when they took Café Casin?
Oh yeah, I was there, right there, because we traveled to Oriente to buy coffee. They say, no, you cannot buy coffee from us. You have to buy coffee from Las Villas, which is another mountain area close to Ciego de Avila. No, we don't sell coffee to you. Then when we went back, we ran out of coffee. And the moment we ran out of coffee, maybe one of the employees there, the militia show up and say, hey, you're stopping a basic industry. We're going to put you in jail. I said, but you people don't sell us coffee. I said, no, that's not an excuse. So, and I got mad, was a black guy, and I got so mad, and my dad kicked me out of there. I said, get out of here, because, so I was so mad. So then they proposed him, if he donates the business to the revolution, they don't put him in jail, and the bank account won't be touched. And that's how they had to turn over the business. Was completely, intimidation, like the mafia.
Yeah.
It was done, and so what can you do? I mean, and then you knew, hey, you can, and I was so mad, but nothing I could do. And it kicked me out of there because I almost punched a guy.
That was after you were already kicked out of school, or was that before?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Well,
this is all happening in between this time of you and leaving
I'm
where you
trying to
have to be
leave.
quiet.
Yeah, I'm trying to leave. Yeah, you don't want any problem. That was the thing. You are with the revolution. It's when you are against the revolution, you're zero. You know, you're trying to leave and things like that. So,
So this is more of a figurative question, but before like let's you were back in school, you know, your Catholic school closed, you're at public school. That's okay, right? Like you're just in another school, you're in high school. You've also mentioned university, sympathizing with university students. You've mentioned, you know, your family businesses. So my question is about the future that you saw for yourself at that point in time when you were in high school, before your entire life took a U-turn essentially, or a 90-degree turn. Where do you think your life was heading, you know, the next 5 years, you know, the after high school years, like where were you, where did you see yourself at that time? Or even if you look back, where do you think you would have gone had this not have happened?
well, if we think there was no revolution, there was a normal life in Cuba. This since I was young, I want to be a doctor, more a gynecology. My mom said that she rather that be for me to be a dentist. So that was the way it was going. That we were planning our future to do that, to to have some kind of a education in college. You know, they didn't have it. My dad didn't have it. My mom didn't have it either. So and that's what I did here. I said I want to have a college. That's the number one obligation, I think, is for people to get education because that's what you got here. Nobody can take away from you. That's the only thing Castro could take away. People left you on the choice. They used their brain somewhere else and they were very successful. So that was the plan was that eventually you'll go to college but you know, sometimes you think that you want to be something when you get to college, you change your mind and you mind up business or engineer or architect, who knows, you know, depends on. But that was, you know, when you're 12, 13 years old, you start thinking of, you know, when you go start getting la secundaria, which is, you know, 12 years old. Oh, well, when I get to 18, I'm going to be to university. And fortunately, I didn't get an opportunity there. But I regrets.
No sirve
I have
para
no,
nada.
no.
Well,
I look back to learn, but I look now, my family, and that's very, very happy.
yeah. Do you think that there was a chance that you would have taken over for the family business or expanded their business as well?
Oh, it could have been. Who knows? You know, it could have been because that's could have been a how you call it national progression, right? In the family, you know, but it's dependent on circumstances. But there was this road, but guess we never know.
No, we don't. But what is
Who knows
funny?
what happened? I ended up being the catering director in Dallas, Texas for many years. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm here in Naples. I left my mark here and the Port Royal Club. So I'm very happy and, you know, proud of what I did. So,
Yeah, I would say it almost seems like you've kind of being with Imperial Meat, that was probably the closest thing to your family's business is.
yeah, and I'm sorry that I bought that business after my dad passed away because he wouldn't enjoy that business because I was his family business since he was a kid. So, you know, but I think of that many, many times. God, my dad could have been there, got his picture there. Would have been great for him to enjoy seeing that.
Yeah. Well, that's how it.
I can see him and Alcide going there because he and Alcide they were friends since they used to play baseball as a kid, and that's why my dad they both went over the fence and say, Oildita. I mean, met my mom, his future wife, and then he told Alcide, I just met the most beautiful girl in the world. He said, that's my sister. So, you know, and it's funny that later in life, Alcide and him still were doing the same thing. Alcide came every day. They listened to Cuban Spanish program in the radio from Miami. They had their lunch. They drank their beer. They fall asleep in the sillones. And so they had a great life in that regard. That they started as a kid and they end up later in life. To me, that always is very impactful to see that. That was beautiful that my dad was able to enjoy that and see this. Yeah.
Yeah, reminds me of the friends you've had over the years, you know? And
Yeah.
that's how life goes, you know? It comes in circles.
Yeah.
I have my two best friends, Joe and Alan, and I hope that when we're older in our 80s that we can do the same thing.
Yeah. That's, and all my friends that basically live in other places and when I look at my basketball team, I think we're only 3 left alive from the basketball team. So it's time to take this tool. So you have to enjoy life and time when you are alive.
Yeah,
and be able to move and don't have a pain in every bone.
Okay. That's how it is, Papi.
Yeah. I'm getting hungry now. It's time for me to eat and take a nap. Okay.
Thank you all. Muchísimas gracias for listening to another episode.
Goodbye. We'll talk to you next time.